My girlfriend demanded I co-sign for her new apartment. Prove you're committed. I replied, no problem. Then I sent her landlord the video of her bragging about trashing her last place. An hour later, her application was denied and she was frantically texting me. I, 29 male, have been with my girlfriend, Jenna, 27, for a little over a year. It's been nice. Easy. She's beautiful, funny, and for the most part we get along great. But there have always been these little moments, these tiny red flags that fluttered in the corner of my eye. A comment about how her friend's boyfriend just bought her a Cartier bracelet, the way she talked about her old jobs, always ending with how the boss was an idiot or her coworkers were jealous. A general sense that the world owed her something a little bit better than what she had. I have a decent job in data analysis. I'm not rich, but I'm stable. I have a good credit score, savings, a 401k. I'm a planner. Jenna is not. She works in marketing, but bounces from freelance gig to freelance gig. Her finances are what you might call aspirational. Last week she told me she had to move out of her current place. Her roommate is getting married. Instantly, Jenna's entire focus shifted to finding a new apartment. Not just any apartment. A luxury one-bedroom in a brand new building with a rooftop pool, a 24-hour concierge, and an in-unit washer-dryer that probably costs more than my car. I saw the listing. It's gorgeous. It's also about twice what she can realistically afford. I tried to gently bring this up. Jenna, this place is amazing, but are you sure the rent is manageable? She just waved a dismissive hand. Oh, I'll make it work. I'm up for a promotion. I've been hearing about this phantom promotion for 6 months. The conversation I'd been dreading came last night. We were at my place, making dinner. She was scrolling through pictures of the apartment on her phone, sighed dramatically, and looked at me with those wide, pleading eyes. Babe, she started, and I could already feel my stomach tighten. So, I talked to the leasing agent. My application is a little weak. What do you mean, weak? I asked, stirring the pasta like my life depended on it. Well, my income isn't consistent enough for them, and my credit is, okay, not great. She took a deep breath. But the agent said there's a simple solution. I just need a cosigner. I stopped stirring. I knew where this was going. I think I've known for a week. And you want me to do it, I said. It wasn't a question. Well, yeah, she said, her voice getting a little too bright. It's just a formality, a signature. It would prove you're really committed to me, to us, that you see a future. There it was, the emotional leverage. Not a discussion about finances or risk, but a test of my love, my commitment. She was holding our relationship hostage for a lease agreement. I told her I needed to think about it. Think about what? She snapped, the brightness gone. It's a simple yes or no, Craig. Do you see a future with me or not? Because if you did, this wouldn't even be a question. She left in a huff a few minutes later, saying she needed to be with people who actually support her. My phone has been buzzing with texts from her and her 2 best friends ever since. All of them variations of, I can't believe you're doing this to her, and after all she does for you, I feel like I'm being railroaded. Co-signing is a massive financial risk. It's legally binding me to her potential irresponsibility. If she flakes on rent, they come after me. It tanks my credit. But if I say no, I'm the uncommitted, unsupportive dirtbag. I'm trapped. And the worst part is, a small, stupid part of me is wondering if she's right. Am I just being selfish? She needs an answer by Friday. I'm sitting here, staring at my ceiling, and I honestly don't know what to do. Update. The pressure campaign that followed was insane. It was a coordinated attack. Her mom called me, using that disappointed, pitying tone about how Jenna has a sensitive soul and just needs a little stability. I tried to offer compromises, offering to give her a significant sum for a deposit on a more affordable place, helping her budget, and was shot down. She didn't want a cheaper place, she deserved this one. The whole thing made me feel dirty, used. The more they pushed, the more my gut screamed at me that this wasn't about an apartment. It was a preview of the future. By Saturday, I'd had enough. Our relationship felt like it was already over, and I was just waiting for the official announcement. I looked around my apartment and saw all her stuff. The extra hair products in my shower, the stack of magazines on my coffee table, the little box of random tech junk she'd left here months ago because her own place was too cluttered. I felt a sudden, urgent need to reclaim my space. I started packing it all up. I was angry, I admit it. Every item I put in the box felt like a small act of taking my own life back. That's when I got to the tech box. Old chargers, a cracked tablet, and a small, portable hard drive. I remembered her complaining that she couldn't find it and that it had her old college stuff on it. Ordinarily, I would have just dumped it in the bigger box. But the pressure, the manipulation, the sheer unfairness of the situation, it created this ugly curiosity in me. My gut had been telling me for a week that something was off about her, about this whole desperate push. I felt a pang of guilt, but it was drowned out by a stronger feeling, self-preservation. I plugged the drive into my laptop. It was a mess of poorly organized folders. Uni-finals, pics 2021, random crap. I clicked on a folder named April-May 22. It was mostly photos, brunches, parties, the usual. But there were about a dozen video files with generic phone-generated names like img4130.mov. I clicked on the first one. It was just a blurry video of a cat. The next was her and her friends at a bar. I almost gave up. Then I saw a thumbnail for img4135.mov. It was a shot of a messy, empty room with cardboard boxes. It looked like a move-out. I clicked it. The video opened on Jenna's face, flushed from wine, a wicked grin plastered across it. And for the next 10 minutes, I watched in stunned silence as she and her friends documented, with gleeful pride, the systematic destruction of her last apartment. "Okay, so," she slurred, "that piece of trash landlord thinks he can keep my security deposit? Game on." I watched them pour a huge container of craft glitter into an air vent. I watched her friend pour bacon grease down the kitchen sink. I watched Jenna herself drag a heavy chair across the hardwood floors, leaving a deep, ugly scratch, winking as she said, "Good thing the rug covers that." They even left raw shrimp inside the curtain rods. It wasn't just the acts themselves, it was the joy they took in it. The laughter, the pride. The video ended with her raising a bottle of rosé. "Cheers to never paying for your own mistakes," she said. My blood ran cold. This was the sensitive soul her mother was talking about. This was the woman who wanted my name, my credit, my entire financial stability tied to hers. The last piece of the puzzle clicked into place. The entitlement, the casual attitude toward money, the belief that she deserved the best. It all stemmed from this core belief that rules and consequences were for other people. I downloaded the video. I sat there for a long time, the glow of the laptop on my face. The anxiety was gone. The confusion was gone. All that was left was a cold, hard clarity. I knew what I had to do. Update 2. Sunday morning, I woke up with a plan. It wasn't a fiery revenge plot. It felt more like a necessary, if unpleasant, business transaction. I went to the luxury apartments website, found the name of the parent property management company, and then used LinkedIn to find the profile of the regional property manager. It took about 20 minutes of clever searching to figure out their corporate email format. At 9:30 a.m., I sent a very calm, very professional email. Subject: information regarding application for App 14B Jenna. Good morning. My name is Craig. I was listed as a potential co-signer on an application for the above unit by my girlfriend, Jenna. In the process of considering this significant financial commitment, I discovered information that I believe is critically relevant to her tenancy history and suitability as a resident. I feel I have a moral and fiduciary responsibility to share this with you, as I would not want my own property treated in this manner. The attached video file provides the necessary context. Sincerely, Craig. I attached the img4135.mov file. I hit send, and then nothing. The hour-later, glorious victory I might have fantasized about didn't happen. All of Monday passed in silence. My sent email just sat there. Jenna, meanwhile, was texting me, her tone having shifted from angry to condescendingly optimistic. Got a call from the leasing office. They're just waiting on the final background check. You're missing out on celebrating with me. My stomach was in knots. Did the manager delete my email? Did it go to spam? Was I about to be legally tied to this person because a stranger didn't check their email? I spent the whole day tense, jumping every time my phone buzzed. The call came Tuesday afternoon. Not from Jenna, but from my own phone buzzing with her name. I let it go to voicemail. Then the texts began. This time they were different. Not immediate rage, but confusion. The agent just called me. She said there was an issue with my application and the regional manager was reviewing it. What does that even mean? An hour later, the real barrage hit. They denied it. They said based on newly discovered information, they were withdrawing the offer. What did you do? They wouldn't say anything else? Just that the decision was final. This has to be you. You sabotaged me. You are a psycho. You will regret this. I swear to God you will pay for this. I read the messages, and the knot in my stomach finally, slowly, began to unwind. It wasn't a triumphant feeling. It was the grim relief of a crisis averted. Update 3. The fallout was messier than I expected. Jenna didn't just get angry. She got vindictive. She and her mother showed up at my apartment on Sunday. I saw them through the peephole and put the chain on before opening the door. The confrontation was exactly as unhinged as you'd imagine. First tears. It was just a joke. We were drunk. Then admissions. That landlord was a jerk. He deserved it. And finally, a demand. You owe me, Jenna stated, her face cold and blotchy. You owe me $10,000 for the emotional distress and for humiliating me. I told them both to leave. Her mother threatened me with a lawsuit for slander. I calmly explained the difference between slander and sharing factual evidence. I closed the door on them screaming. I thought that would be the end of it. It wasn't. 2 days later, I got a call from an unknown number. I answered, and a polite but firm voice identified himself as an officer with the local police department. My blood turned to ice. Sir, he said, we've received a complaint from a Ms. Jenna, her last name. She's alleging that you are harassing her and that you are in possession of a piece of her stolen property, a hard drive. I could barely breathe. This was her move, a bogus police report. I took a deep breath and forced myself to sound as calm and reasonable as possible. Officer, I said, I can explain the situation. The hard drive was left at my apartment, which I can prove with text messages. The harassment claim is retaliation. She's upset because I refused to co-sign an apartment lease for her, and I can explain why I refused. Okay, the officer said, sounding weary, like this was already the 10th ridiculous domestic dispute he'd handled that day. The reason I refused, I continued, is that I discovered evidence that she intentionally and maliciously caused thousands of dollars in damages to a previous rental property. I have a video of her bragging about it. I sent it to the property manager of the new apartment. That's what this is about. She's not being harassed. She's facing consequences. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. A video? He finally asked. Yes, sir. I'd be happy to come down to the station and show it to you. Another pause, then a heavy sigh. Sir, listen. We're not getting involved in your breakup. Tell her to stop contacting you. You stop contacting her. If she shows up at your door again, call us. But this stolen property claim over a hard drive left at your place isn't going anywhere. Have a good day. He hung up. I stood there, phone in my hand, shaking. She had actually tried to get me arrested. The sheer malice of it solidified everything. This wasn't a bad girlfriend. This was a bad person. The last shred of sympathy I had for her evaporated. Final update. After the police call, I knew I had to do something to protect myself. Her attempt at extortion and filing a false police report crossed a line. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about ending this. I wrestled with it for a day, but I knew who I had to call. I called Jenna's mom. She started in immediately, accusing me of traumatizing her daughter. I let her talk. When she finally ran out of steam, I spoke. Mrs. her last name, I said, my voice quiet. I am not calling to argue. I'm calling because Jenna came to my home and tried to extort me for $10,000. And when that didn't work, she filed a false police report against me for theft. I spoke with an officer yesterday. This has gone too far. She's just upset, she insisted, though with less conviction this time. She's committing crimes, I countered. And I think you need to understand the full context of why she's so upset. You need to understand why I refused to tie my name to her. I am going to send you an email. The file attached is the video from the hard drive she left at my apartment. Watch it. Then you can decide if I'm the monster here. I hung up and sent the email. The effect wasn't immediate. There was no tearful, apologetic phone call. There was just silence. But through a mutual acquaintance, I started to hear things. Whispers of a massive blowout fight at their house. Jenna's mom wasn't just mad, she was deeply, profoundly humiliated. She had defended her daughter, called me, and put her own reputation on the line, all based on a lie. Seeing the gleeful, destructive pride in her daughter's face on that video, and knowing it was real, broke something in her. There was no clean break. It was a slow, agonizing crumble. Her parents didn't kick her out right away, but the support system vanished. No more handouts, no more covering her car insurance. They told her she had to get a real full-time job and start paying them rent to stay in her childhood bedroom. The dream of the luxury apartment was replaced by the harsh reality of her own choices. Jenna is still around. I see her posts sometimes on social media. The curated brunch photos are gone, replaced by angry, vague rants about fake people and life being unfair. She got a job working at a cell phone kiosk in a mall. She had to sell her car. She moved out of her parents' house last week into a dingy room-for-rent situation she shares with 2 other people. Seeing her downfall doesn't bring me joy. It's actually kind of pathetic. It's the sad, inevitable trajectory of a life built on deceit when the lies finally stop working. There's no glamour in it. I'm left with a profound sense of relief, but it's tinged with sadness for the person I thought I knew. The experience forced me to grow a spine I didn't know I had. I learned that no is a complete sentence and that protecting your own future isn't selfish. The justice wasn't a cinematic explosion. It was the slow, quiet, and unavoidable process of gravity taking over. And I am finally, truly, at peace. My wife sold my classic car for her designer bags, saying it was just taking up space. I said okay. Then I used her inheritance money to buy it back and put it in my mother's name. The next day, her family was demanding I give it back. I, 38 male, am a systems analyst. My world is built on logic, on cause and effect. When a system breaks, I don't get emotional. I analyze the failure points. I stay calm. I find a solution. I think that's the only reason I'm able to write this right now. My wife, Kenzie, 35, and I have been married for 10 years. It's been a stable, predictable life. We have our separate interests, but we've always functioned as a unit, or so I believed. My one true passion, the one thing that is wholly mine, is my car. It's a 1969 Ford Mustang Mach 1, finished in raven black. It wasn't just bought, it was built. My dad and I restored it in the garage of my childhood home. He passed away 6 years ago, and that car is the most tangible piece of him I have left. Every cent of leather and gasoline is a memory. It's a premarital asset, fully owned by me long before I ever met Kenzie. Its value isn't in dollars, though it's worth a significant amount. Its value is in my history. Kenzie has always called it that old gas guzzler. To her, its sole purpose was to occupy her preferred parking spot in the garage. She'd joke about it, but underneath there was always a current of genuine annoyance. I never took it seriously. That was my mistake. About a month ago, Kenzie's grandmother passed away, leaving her a sizable inheritance. The estate sent a check for $150,000. I remember the day it arrived. She was ecstatic. I suggested she open a separate personal account for it, to keep it as her own separate property. "Oh, that's too much work," she'd said, waving her hand dismissively. "I'll just put it in our joint checking for now and move it later. It's easier." And she did. She mobile deposited a $150,000 check into the account we both use for bills and direct deposits. The number sat there on the balance screen, an anomaly amongst the mortgage payments and grocery bills. I felt a knot in my stomach even then. It felt reckless. Yesterday, that recklessness came home to roost. I got home from work, and the moment I turned into the driveway, I knew. The garage door was open. The space where the Mustang lived was a sterile patch of concrete. It was like a missing tooth in a smile you've known your whole life. I walked into the house, my heart beating a slow, heavy drum against my ribs. Kenzie was in the living room, humming. Arranged on the sofa were several new designer handbags. A big leather tote, a fancy clutch, another one with a recognizable pattern. They looked expensive and utterly alien in our home. I didn't say anything. I just stood in the doorway. She turned, her smile bright and wide. "Hi, honey, look what I got." I decided it was time to invest in some quality pieces. My voice was flat, devoid of any inflection. "Kenzie, where is the Mustang?" Her smile didn't vanish, but it tightened. "Oh, that? Don't get worked up. I sold it." I waited for the punchline. It never came. It was just taking up space, she said, her tone defensive. It was ancient. You barely drove it, and this man from a classic car dealership offered an amazing price right on the spot. It was just sitting there, losing value. Now we have a huge chunk of cash, and I have these beautiful things that I'll actually use. She genuinely believed this was a reasonable, logical exchange. She had unilaterally decided to liquidate my most prized possession, a piece of my soul, for accessories. She saw my father's legacy as seed money. I looked at her, at the triumphant, expectant look on her face, and the system failure became clear. This wasn't a bug. This was a feature of her programming I had failed to see. The calm I'm known for descended. It wasn't an act. It was a defense mechanism. Panic is useless. Emotion is a distraction. I needed to analyze, and I needed a solution. How much did you sell it for? I asked. $50,000, she announced, proud of the number. I know for a fact, based on recent auction results for similar models, it's worth closer to $85,000, maybe more. She didn't get a good price. She got a fast price. I just nodded. Okay. The single word confused her more than a day of screaming would have. Okay. Seriously? I thought you'd be furious. I'm tired, I said. I'm going to go have a shower. I walked out of the room, leaving her with her collection. But I wasn't going to shower. I was going to my office to start working on a solution. The money was in our joint account. She had commingled her inheritance, making it legally accessible to me. And the man who runs the most reputable classic Ford dealership in the region is named Milo. I have his number in my phone. She didn't sell it to a random guy. She sold it to the one person I knew would pick up my call. TLDR. My wife sold my deceased father's classic Mustang to buy designer bags. She deposited her huge inheritance into our joint account first. I acted calm, but I'm about to use those commingled funds to get my car back. Update 1. Thank you for the comments and messages. Reading them, especially the ones urging caution, was grounding. It forced me to slow down and ensure every step was methodical. My first instinct was to immediately drain the account and get the car. But as a systems guy, I know that acting without a clear protocol leads to catastrophic failure. Step 1. Legal consultation. The morning after Kenzie's announcement, I took a personal day. I didn't confront her. I went to see a divorce lawyer, a man named Julian, who was highly recommended by a colleague. I laid out the entire situation in his office. The premarital status of the car, the documented value, the sale without my consent, and the crucial fact that her $150 inheritance was sitting in our joint checking account. Julian listened, nodding slowly. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair. What your wife did is called dissipation of assets, he explained. She took a valuable, separate asset of yours and converted it to cash for her own benefit. That's a serious issue in a divorce settlement. The fact that she deposited her inheritance into a joint account is a massive, unforced error on her part. Those funds are now commingled. Legally, you have as much right to access that money as she does. He mapped out a strategy. It was aggressive but legally sound. You can use the joint funds to recover your property, he said. It's a bold move. It will detonate the marriage, but it's defensible. You're not stealing. You're using shared capital to rectify a financial injury she inflicted upon you by selling your separate property. But, he warned, be prepared. This will get ugly. Step 2. The recovery. Armed with a clear legal footing, I acted. I called Milo. He was shocked and deeply apologetic. Grant, she told me you were both on board, that you were downsizing for a move and were too emotional to handle the sale yourself. I feel like a fool. He confirmed the price, $50,000. I told him I wanted it back and that I'd pay him $55,000 for his trouble and to cover his paperwork. He tried to refuse the extra, but I insisted. He was an innocent party caught in the crossfire. He agreed immediately. Step 3. The transaction and the shield. From my laptop at a coffee shop, I logged into our joint bank account. I initiated a wire transfer for $55,000 to Milo. Then I met him and my mother at a notary office. As Julian had advised, this was a calculated risk. We transferred the title directly into my mother's name. Julian's logic was that we could argue this wasn't hiding a marital asset but protecting my now recovered separate property from a spouse who had already proven she was willing to steal and sell it. It's now legally my mother's car, parked securely in her garage. I have the keys. The confrontation came that night. Kenzie was giddy, showing me a travel website. I was thinking with the car money we could go to. I need to talk to you, I said, cutting her off. I led her to the home office and sat her down. I calmly told her what I had done. I contacted Milo. I used the money in the joint account to buy the Mustang back. It's at my mother's house now, titled in her name. The color drained from her face. You did what? From the joint account? That was my inheritance. You can't just take $55,000. You're right, it was your inheritance, I said, my voice steady. But you put it in our joint account, commingling the funds, and you sold my car, my separate property. You took an asset worth over $80,000 from me. I used our shared funds to recover it. According to my lawyer, I've simply made myself partially whole. The rest will be settled later. The mention of a lawyer sent a tremor through her. Lawyer? What are you talking about? This marriage is over, Kenzie. Her shock morphed into pure, undiluted rage. Not sadness, not remorse, just fury that her payday had been snatched away. You'll pay for this, Grant. You stole from me? My family will hear about this. She stormed out of the room, phone to her ear. I could hear her screaming to her father on the other end. I just sat there, the quiet of the office feeling like the eye of a hurricane. Julian was right. It's going to get ugly. Update 2. The storm has made landfall. Kenzie's family, her father Dennis, mother Sharon, and older brother Ryder, drove down 2 days after my last post. They didn't come to mediate. They came as enforcers, walking into the house with Kenzie's key as if they owned the place. Dennis, a man whose presence fills a room with bluster and cheap cologne, started immediately. I don't know what kind of game you're playing, son, but it's over. You stole my daughter's money. Hello, Dennis, I said calmly from the kitchen island. Kenzie sold my property. I used our shared funds to recover it. It's that simple. Sharon, a woman who wields disappointment like a weapon, put her hand on my arm. Grant, dear, we know you're hurt, but families make mistakes. Kenzie made a mistake. A husband is supposed to be forgiving. You need to call your mother and have her sign that car over to Kenzie, and then you need to put the money back. It's the only way to fix this. The sheer, breathtaking entitlement of that statement, that I should give her the car and the money, leaving me with nothing but the betrayal, was almost impressive. Then Ryder, who was 30 going on 16, stepped up. He got into my personal space, trying to use his size to intimidate me. Listen up. You're going to make this right now, or I'll make you. This is where my lawyer's advice paid off. Before they arrived, I'd looked up the law. My state is a one-party consent state. As long as I am a part of the conversation, I am legally allowed to record it. My phone was in my shirt pocket, recording audio. I just looked at Ryder and said, Ryder, you are making threats in my home. You need to step back, or I will call the police and have you removed for trespassing. He laughed. You don't have the guts. I didn't argue. I just pulled my phone out, unlocked it, and my thumb hovered over the 911 shortcut. His bravado evaporated. He backed down, muttering under his breath. The next 48 hours were a siege of emotional manipulation. They accused me of financial abuse, of being controlling, of being jealous of Kenzie's newfound wealth. Kenzie sat by, weeping on cue, the perfect victim. My mother called me. Dennis had phoned her and tried to bully her, threatening her with legal action for harboring stolen property. My mom, a retired schoolteacher, listened patiently before saying, Sir, my name is on the title, and the conversation is over, and hung up. The family left this morning, but not before Kenzie delivered a final, desperate volley. They had a new strategy. She cornered me, her voice low and conspiratorial. Okay, Grant, you want the car? Fine, keep it, but you need to give me the $55,000 back. That's only fair. My inheritance for your car. It was a classic negotiation tactic. Ignore the fact that the car was worth far more than the cash she got, ignore the theft itself, and frame it as a simple exchange. She was trying to buy my forgiveness and my car for a discount, using her own inheritance. That's not how this works, Kenzie, I said. We're past that. Yesterday I received an email. It was from a Mr. Sterling, a partner at a prestigious law firm. It was not a blustering letter of threats. It was a sharp, professional notice of representation. It stated that I had, in no uncertain terms, misappropriated $55,000 of Kenzie's separate property that was temporarily housed in a joint account, and they would be pursuing its full recovery, along with all legal fees. Reading it, I felt the first real spike of fear. This wasn't her bully father yelling anymore. This was a real fight. TLDR, my wife's family tried to intimidate me, but I stood my ground and have it all on tape. Now she's hired a serious lawyer who is coming after me for the money I used to buy the car back. The real battle is just beginning. Final update. It's over. The last 3 months have felt like a slow-motion legal car crash, but I've walked away from the wreckage. It wasn't the clean, swift victory you see in movies. It was a grinding, expensive, and stressful war of attrition. Kenzie's lawyer, Mr. Sterling, was no fool. His opening salvo was an aggressive motion filed with the court, demanding an immediate freeze on our assets and the return of the $55,000. He argued that Kenzie's inheritance was clearly intended as separate property, and my immediate withdrawal of a large sum constituted financial misconduct. He was good. For a week, I was genuinely terrified he might win. My lawyer, Julian, didn't flinch. He filed our countermotion. It was a detailed, evidence-backed narrative of what had actually happened. The asset. We provided the Mustang's original title in my father's name, the transfer to me, and 3 independent valuations showing its worth between $80,000 and $90,000. This established it as my separate, premarital property of significant value. The dissipation. We included a sworn affidavit from Milo, the dealer, detailing how Kenzie had misrepresented the sale. We attached a copy of the bill of sale she signed for $50,000. Julian argued this was a textbook case of dissipation of assets, and a fraudulent one at that. The recoupment. We showed the deposit of the $150,000 inheritance check into the joint account, making the funds legally commingled. Our argument was that my withdrawal wasn't misconduct, it was a justifiable, if aggressive, act of recoupment, to mitigate the financial damage she had caused by converting my asset to cash. The battle then moved to the discovery phase. Lawyers, depositions, mediation. It was brutal. The recording of her family's threats was deemed admissible and became a key piece of evidence showing their pattern of intimidation. The turning point came during mediation. We were all in a sterile conference room, me and Julian, Kenzie and Sterling, and a neutral mediator. Kenzie, under Sterling's coaching, was trying to play the part of the wronged wife. Sterling argued, Mr. Pat Mourner took it upon himself to drain the joint account of funds he knew were from Miss Prescott's inheritance. Julian countered calmly. Miss Prescott took it upon herself to sell Mr. Mourner's irreplaceable, premarital property for roughly 60% of its value. My client simply used available, commingled funds to recover his stolen property. In fact, he is still at a loss of approximately $30,000. Not to mention the $5,000 premium he had to pay to recover the car. Then Julian played his final card. Furthermore, he said, sliding a folder across the table, we have itemized the purchases Miss Prescott made with the initial funds from the sale. A collection of designer handbags valued at $18,450. We contend these bags were purchased with money derived from a fraudulent transaction and should be considered part of the marital estate to be credited against her share. That's when Kenzie broke. The pressure of the legal jargon, the sight of her shopping spree being itemized like a criminal's ledger, it was too much. This is insane, she shouted. It was just a stupid car. The mediator looked at her, then at her lawyer. That one outburst revealed everything. It wasn't a mistake. She still believed she had done nothing fundamentally wrong. Sterling knew he was losing. The commingled funds were his weakest point, and Kenzie's clear intent to deprive me of my property was her biggest vulnerability. The negotiation got serious. Sterling wanted to protect the remainder of Kenzie's inheritance. Julian wanted to ensure I was made whole. We settled that day. The agreement was complex, but the outcome was clear. The $55,000 withdrawal from the joint account was officially characterized in the settlement as reimbursement for the value of a separate asset. It was a wash. She didn't have to pay it back, but I didn't have to count it as my asset. The Mustang is acknowledged as my mother's property, free of any and all claims. To avoid a fight over the handbags, Kenzie had to concede on the house. I received 60% of the home's equity instead of 50% to compensate for the remaining value of the car and legal fees. She walked away with the rest of her inheritance intact, but her net worth took a massive hit from the loss of the house equity and her substantial legal bills. I saw her one last time when we signed the final papers. She wouldn't look at me. The entitlement was gone, replaced by a hollow bitterness. Her family, who had bankrolled her fight, had cost her a fortune in a losing battle. I'm in a smaller apartment now. It's quiet. Last weekend I went to my mom's house. I pulled the cover off the Mustang. The light gleamed on the black paint. I got in, turned the key, and the engine rumbled to life. It's a sound my dad loved. For months I'd felt nothing but cold, calculated anger. But sitting in that car, in the quiet of the garage, I finally felt something else. A sense of peace. It wasn't a win. A win would have been never having to go through this. It was a recovery. I had recovered a piece of my past, and in the process I had secured my future. My fiancé gave my dog to a shelter. It's me or the mutt. I replied, I see. Then I sent the shelter proof of her animal cruelty complaint and adopted my dog back. Now she has a court date and is begging me for help. I, 32 male, am an architect. I live in a house I designed, a place where every line has a purpose and every material is chosen for a reason. I try to live my life the same way, with careful planning and intention. I thought my future with my fiancée, Jessica, 30, was my master blueprint. I've never been more wrong. I came home from a site visit 2 days ago to a house that was unnervingly silent. My golden retriever Winston always greets me at the door. He does this goofy full-body wiggle, usually with his favorite worn-out stuffed lobster in his mouth. But that day, there was nothing. No wiggle, no lobster, no Winston. I called his name. An echo. I walked through the house, a cold knot tightening in my gut. His bed from the corner of the living room was gone. His food and water bowls weren't by the back door. The little rack where his leashes hung was empty. Jessica was in the kitchen, scrolling on her phone and sipping a glass of Sauvignon Blanc. She looked up as I entered, her expression placid. Hey, I said, my voice strained. Where's Winston? She took a deliberate, slow sip before answering. I took him to the county shelter. The words didn't compute for a second. I just stared at her, waiting for the punchline. You what? He's just not a good fit for the life we're building, she said, her tone matter-of-fact. With the wedding coming up and then kids, I was being practical. It was time. My brain felt like it was short-circuiting. Winston is 7. I've had him since he was a fluff ball of a puppy. He's seen me through failed exams, my dad's cancer scare, and the stress of starting my own firm. He is a part of my foundation. Practical? The word felt foreign in my mouth. Jessica, you don't just get rid of a family member. We talked about this. I told you he was non-negotiable. I know, she said, finally getting up and walking toward me. She tried to place her hands on my chest, but I instinctively stepped back. But I thought you were just being sentimental. He sheds constantly. He's always underfoot. Today he was whining all morning while I was trying to finalize the floral arrangements, and I just realized it had to be either him or me. I made the executive decision. The ultimatum she created and executed all in one afternoon. I felt a strange, cold calm descend. It was the detached focus I get when a major project goes wrong. The emotion has to be walled off so the problem can be solved. I see, I said. It was all I could manage. Her smile was relieved. Good, I knew you'd understand. This is for the best, for us. I didn't reply. I just grabbed my keys, walked out the door, and got in my car. The calm held until I was on the road, then my hands started shaking so badly I had to grip the steering wheel to keep them steady. At the shelter, the smell of disinfectant and the low hum of animal anxiety hit me hard. I explained the situation to a woman at the desk with kind, tired eyes. She typed Winston's description into her system. Her brow furrowed. A golden retriever, yes. Surrendered this morning. The paperwork lists the reason for surrender as aggression. There's a formal complaint attached, filed by a Miss Jessica Becker, stating the dog bit her on the arm, unprovoked. The world went red, then snapped into sharp, terrifying focus. She hadn't just surrendered him. She had lied to put a target on his back. A bite history makes a dog almost unadoptable. It's often a death sentence. Winston, who lets neighborhood kids use him as a pillow, who has never shown an ounce of aggression in his life. The architect in me took over. A flawed design must be demolished. That's a lie, I said, my voice level despite the fury churning inside me. I am the registered owner. My name is on his microchip and all of his vet records. I have security cameras in my home. I can prove that never happened. The woman nodded, her expression grim. I'll need to verify that. If you're on the chip and vet records, you can reclaim him. But this complaint, once it's filed, we have a duty to report it. If you can prove it's false, you should file a police report. That's the only way to officially challenge it. It took an hour of phone calls to my vet to have his records faxed over, of waiting while they scanned his chip and it came back to my name and number. Finally, they brought him out. He looked confused and scared, but the moment he saw me, his tail gave a tentative thump, then another, until his whole body was wiggling. I brought him home. Jessica has been calling and texting, but I haven't answered. The engagement ring is on the kitchen counter. I've already downloaded the video files from this morning. They show Jessica getting annoyed at Winston for nudging her hand for a pet, then luring him into her car with a treat. No bite, no attack, just betrayal. She wanted to be practical. She's about to learn all about cause and effect. Update 1, it's been a while. Things have moved at the speed of bureaucracy, which is to say, molasses in winter. Thanks for the comments on my original post. They were a lifeline when I felt like I was losing my mind. The day after I brought Winston home, I filed a police report for the false complaint Jessica filed. I provided them with the video evidence. The officer was professional but non-committal, saying they would investigate. That was the start of the long, agonizing wait. The confrontation with Jessica was ugly. I had her things packed into boxes within a week. She'd been staying at her parents' place, bombarding me with texts that swung wildly from, "I'm so sorry, I'll do anything," to, "You're a monster for choosing a dog over me." When she came with her father, Charles, to get her stuff, she tried to play the victim. "Thomas, please," she said, tears in her eyes. "Don't do this. It was a mistake. I was stressed." "It wasn't a mistake, Jessica. It was a choice," I said, standing in the doorway while her father loaded boxes into his SUV. "You lied to try and have my dog killed. The only thing I have left to say to you is that you should probably find a good lawyer." That's when the first real countermove came. About a month ago, I received a certified letter from a law firm. It wasn't a clumsy demand for custody. It was smarter and colder. It claimed that Winston was shared property acquired during our engagement, and that she had made significant emotional and financial investments in the animal's well-being. It demanded I either surrender the dog to her or provide financial compensation to the tune of $5,000. My heart sank. It was absurd, but it was official and threatening. I took it to a lawyer my own client had recommended. Her name was Sarah. She wasn't a cinematic character who laughed out loud. She read the letter with a thin, wry smile. "This is an emotionally driven tactic," she said, tapping the page. "It's designed to bully you into a settlement. Her financial investment is legally meaningless unless she has receipts, and claiming a dog you've owned for 7 years is shared property from a 2-year relationship is a stretch. We'll draft a response." The response was a masterpiece of legal prose, citing precedent regarding pet ownership, predating a relationship, and politely requesting documentation for her alleged $5,000 investment. We never got a reply. The real blow came at work. My biggest client, the head of a major commercial development, called me in for a meeting. He looked uncomfortable. "Thomas," he started, "I got a strange call last week. It was from your ex-fiancée. She told me she was deeply concerned about your stability and ability to handle this project." My blood ran cold. This was the sabotage I had feared. "She's lying," I said, my voice tight. "I gathered that," he said, holding up a hand. "But you need to understand my position. I have stakeholders to answer to. The perception of instability on a project this large is a problem, regardless of the truth. I'm not pulling you from the project, but I'm telling you this has put you under a microscope. Keep your head down, meet your deadlines, and don't give me a reason to doubt you." It wasn't, "We've got your back." It was a warning. A single misstep on a multi-million-dollar project, and I could be ruined professionally. The stress has been immense. Every night I come home exhausted, terrified of a phone call or email that could end my career. Winston seems to sense it. He spends most evenings with his head in my lap, a quiet, furry anchor in a storm of my own making. Update 2. The wheels of justice grind slowly, and they grind you down in the process. For months, there was nothing but silence. The police investigation into the false report was ongoing. My lawyer said this was normal. Jessica and I existed in a state of Cold War. Then, about 2 months ago, she escalated things in a way I never predicted. I was on a work trip for 3 days. The day I got back, I walked into my house and knew immediately something was wrong. The air was still. I did a quick walkthrough. Nothing seemed to be missing, but when I got to my office, my stomach dropped to my shoes. My large, incredibly detailed architectural model for the community center, my passion project, the one my client was watching like a hawk, was destroyed. Someone had taken a hammer to it. The delicate structures were smashed, the landscape scarred. It was a ruin. Then I saw a note on my desk, on her floral stationery. I just wanted my grandmother's ring back. You left me no choice. I checked the small box where I'd kept the engagement ring. It was gone. She had used it as an excuse. I went straight to my security system. The footage from the day before showed Jessica's car pulling up. She used a key she must have had copied to let herself in. She went straight to the office. The camera in there caught everything. She spent a minute looking for something before her eyes landed on the model. Her face was a mask of pure rage. She picked up a heavy tape dispenser from my desk and just laid into the model, methodically, viciously. Then she grabbed the ring box and left. My first call was to my lawyer. My second was to the police. This time there was no ambiguity. It was breaking and entering, theft and destruction of property, all on camera. The police response was, again, procedural. They took my statement, collected the video evidence, took photos of the damage, and dusted for prints. They didn't arrest her on the spot. An officer told me, "We have more than enough here. We'll refer this to the DA's office. They'll decide on the charges." Another wait began. But this time, the stakes were higher. I had to go to my client and tell him my project model had been destroyed by my ex-fiancée. It was the most humiliating meeting of my life. I laid out the facts, showed him the police report number. He was silent for a long time. "Get me a new model," he said, his voice cold as steel, "and a report on any potential project delays. This cannot impact the timeline. Understood?" "Understood," I said. The last 6 weeks have been hell. I worked 80-hour weeks, fueled by coffee and rage, to rebuild the model from scratch. My team was amazing, but the pressure was immense. Winston was my only source of sanity. Every time I felt like I was about to break, he'd nudge my hand, reminding me what I was fighting for. 2 weeks ago, the DA finally filed charges. Jessica was arrested at her parents' house. It's all moving forward now, but I'm not celebrating. This whole process has cost me time, money, and peace of mind. There's no clean victory here. Final update, it's over. After a 1.5 years of legal maneuvering, delays, and rescheduled dates, we finally had the trial last month. It was a consolidated case, filing a false police report, breaking and entering, theft, and misdemeanor destruction of property. My lawyer had prepped me extensively. Just the facts, no emotion, let the evidence speak. And it did. The prosecution played my security footage. First, the video of Winston being gently lured into her car. Then, the video of her breaking into my office and methodically destroying my work. The contrast was stark and damning. The shelter director testified about the danger of a false bite report. A police officer testified about the B&E. I testified about the timeline of events and the professional cost of the destroyed model. Jessica's defense was to paint her as a woman scorned, pushed to the edge by a cold, unfeeling partner. Her lawyer argued emotional distress. Jessica cried on the stand. It didn't work. The evidence was too clear, too calculated. The judge found her guilty on all counts. There was no jail time, which we expected. The sentence was 2 years of probation, a significant fine that covered court costs and the $4,800 assessed value of the destroyed model, 250 hours of community service. The judge specifically barred her from working with animals and court-mandated psychological counseling, and of course, a criminal record. She voluntarily surrendered her teaching license before the state board could revoke it. I saw her on the courthouse steps afterward. She was standing with her parents, Charles and Nancy, her face pale and blotchy. She saw me and walked over, a desperate, wild look in her eyes. "Are you happy now?" she hissed. "Look at what you've done to me. I have nothing left." A year ago, I might have felt rage. On that day, all I felt was a profound sense of exhaustion and pity. "You did this, Jessica," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "Every single step, your choices, your consequences." "I can't pay these fines," she pleaded, her voice cracking. "My parents are helping, but, Thomas, please, for what we once had." "What we had was a lie," I said, turning away. "I have to go walk my dog." And I left. Life is quiet now. The fear that haunted me for over a year is finally gone. The community center project was a success, and my firm's reputation is stronger than ever. The house doesn't feel empty. It feels like mine again. A few weeks ago, I unearthed the original blueprints for the house I'd designed for Jessica and me. I almost threw them away, but then I had a better idea. I laid them out on my drafting table, took out my pens, and started to redesign. I erased the massive walk-in closet in the master suite and replaced it with a custom dog washing station with a heated floor and a ramp. The formal dining room she wanted is now a library with a large bay window and a built-in dog bed. I renamed the plan on the title block. It no longer reads the Miller-Becker residence. It just says home. It's just me and Winston. It's a quiet life, a simple one, but it's built on a solid foundation, and this time I know it will last. Thank you all for being a part of the demolition and the reconstruction. We're good now. My fiancée canceled our wedding via text. I replied, my condolences. Then I forwarded her text to her parents, who paid for everything. An hour later, her dad was urgently calling me. I, 32 male, am, or rather was, engaged to Jessica, 30. Our wedding was scheduled for 2 weeks from today, on October 18th. The venue was booked, a stunning historical building that cost a small fortune. The caterer was confirmed, the flowers were ordered. Her dress, a custom-made confection of lace, and what I now understand was pure entitlement, was paid for and awaiting its debut. And the financiers of this grand production? Her parents, Richard and Susan Vance. Richard, in particular, was immensely proud of the affair, treating it less like a wedding and more like a corporate merger where he was acquiring a son-in-law he deemed stable. This morning at 9:17 a.m., while I was trying to focus on a spreadsheet, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Jessica. "Hey, I can't do this. I'm not in a place to get married right now. My heart isn't in it, and I need to follow my truth. I'm really sorry." I read the text once, then twice. A wave of nausea rolled through me, and the numbers on my screen blurred into meaningless squiggles. For a full minute, I just sat there, my hand trembling slightly as I held the phone. It felt like the floor had dropped out from under me. 4 years, a 1-year engagement, countless hours of mind-numbing planning, all detonated by a 33-word text. Then the initial shock receded and something else took its place. It wasn't pain, not yet. It was a strange, cold clarity. It was the feeling you get when you finally solve a complex puzzle and see the whole ugly picture. All the little weirdnesses of the past few months. The late nights she claimed were with friends, the sudden intense friendship with a wellness guru named Joseph. The way she'd angle her phone away from me, they all snapped into a perfect, horrifying alignment. My fingers felt clumsy, but they moved. I thought about typing 1,000 things, a torrent of anger and questions. But what was the point? She hadn't given me the respect of a conversation. I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction of a meltdown. A flash of dark, morbid humor struck me. I typed back 2 words. Me. My condolences. It felt right. It was for the death of our relationship, for the person I thought she was, for the future that had just been executed. Then, with a steadiness that surprised me, I took a screenshot of her text. I opened my email, attached the image, and sent it to Richard and Susan Vance. The subject line was simple, regarding the wedding. I added no commentary. The text was its own testament. I put my phone on silent and shoved it in my desk drawer. I couldn't look at it. I spent the next hour pretending to work, my mind a blank, roaring void. The chaos was coming, but I had simply rerouted the storm to its source. When I finally pulled my phone out an hour later, it was a war zone. 12 missed calls from Jessica, 7 from Susan, and 1, the most recent one, from Richard. His contact photo, a picture of him on his boat looking smug, stared back at me. The notification simply read, "Richard Vance, urgent call requested." I took a deep breath, let it out slowly, and knew I had to wait. I couldn't take that call in my office. I needed to be on my own ground before facing the man who cared more about his deposits than my dignity. Update 1 3 days later. Thank you for the comments and DMs. It's validating to know I'm not crazy. Many of you asked about the call with Richard. I waited until I was home that evening, after giving myself hours to let the adrenaline subside and think clearly. I needed every ounce of composure I could muster. I poured a whiskey and hit dial. He picked up before the first ring finished. "Thomas," he barked. It wasn't a greeting, it was an accusation. "Richard," I replied, my voice steady. "I got your email. What the hell is this? Is this some kind of joke?" "I wish it were," I said calmly. "I received that text from Jessica at 9:17 a.m. That's the entirety of what I know." There was a muffled sound, and then Susan's piercing voice came through the speaker. "Thomas, darling, what is he talking about? Jessica said you two had a little tiff. She's just got cold feet. All brides get it. You're the steady one, Thomas. You need to fix this. You need to fix this." The phrase echoed in my head, the sheer audacity of it. I, the recipient of the breakup text, was now tasked with being the emotional janitor for their social catastrophe. "Susan," I said, a distinct chill entering my tone. "A tiff is an argument over where to get dinner. This was a termination. Your daughter ended our engagement. There is nothing for me to fix." Richard cut back in, his voice a low growl of controlled fury. "We have over $150,000 sunk into this event, Thomas. $150,000. The venue is non-refundable. The caterer has a cancellation clause that will gut us. This is not a cold feet situation we can just brush off." The conversation orbited entirely around the money, the contracts, the social embarrassment. Not one "are you okay?" Not a shred of sympathy. I was just a faulty component in their elaborate machine. "That sounds like a conversation you need to have with your daughter," I stated. "She's the one who breached the agreement with me, and by extension, with you." Before they could unload another volley of blame, my other line beeped. It was Jessica. A wave of anger, hot and sharp, finally pierced my calm. I said, "I have to go," and hung up on the Vances. I stared at Jessica's name on the screen and hit ignore. So hard I thought the glass might crack. A moment later, the text started. "You told my parents? You went behind my back and tried to turn them against me. You know how my dad is. This is exactly why I couldn't marry you. You're so manipulative and vindictive. You need to call them right now and tell them you overreacted and we're working through it. My dad is threatening to cut me off. This is your fault." It was breathtaking. The complete and total abdication of responsibility. I didn't reply. Instead, I walked into my home office. On the corner of my desk was a heavy, polished wooden box. Inside, nestled in velvet, was the custom-made chronograph watch I had bought for Richard. It was a beautiful piece, subtly engraved on the back. "Richard, thank you for welcoming me into the family. Thomas. October 18, 2025. The wedding date. Our wedding date." I closed the box. I felt the first real pang of grief, not for the Jessica who sent that text, but for the woman I thought I was marrying, for the family I thought I was joining, for the future that was now just a ghost. I spent the next few days in a fog, methodically canceling my arrangements, informing my family, and trying to keep my head above water. The real trouble, I would soon find out, was just beginning. Update 2. The past week has been an education in audacity. The Vances, having failed to guilt me into fixing their problem, moved on to asset recovery. I received an email from Susan stating that since the wedding was off, I was morally and legally obligated to return Jessica's engagement ring. She helpfully suggested it could help offset some of the catastrophic losses they were incurring. They wanted me to return the $22,000 ring I paid for so they could pawn it. I replied with a link to our state's laws on conditional gifts and a simple message: "The ring is my property. Consider the matter closed." Of course, they didn't. Jessica began a smear campaign. I started getting tentative calls from mutual friends. The story she was spinning was that I had become controlling and emotionally distant, that I was suffocating her. Joseph, the guru, was now the heroic friend who helped her find the strength to leave. I wanted to scream, but instead, I consulted a lawyer. Not for a lawsuit, but for strategy. I explained the whole situation, the text, the money, the lease on our apartment, which is primarily in her name, and the smear campaign. His advice was grim but empowering. "You're in a war," he said. "The goal isn't to win, it's to extract yourself with the least possible damage. Document everything. Communicate only in writing. And protect your assets." Armed with this, I handled the friends issue. In a group chat for a now-canceled wedding event, I posted a simple message. "Hey everyone, I'm sure you've heard the wedding is off. Just to be clear, Jessica ended our engagement last week. It's been a difficult time, and I'm focusing on the logistics of separating our lives. I wish her the best." It was neutral but factual. It corrected the record without being dramatic. The private messages I got afterward confirmed it was the right move. The Vances and Jessica's stories were already starting to contradict each other. The real test came this morning. My doorbell rang. It was Jessica and Joseph. He was exactly as I'd pictured. Tan, perfect teeth, and the vacant eyes of someone who uses the word synergy without irony. "I need to get my things," she said, not looking at me. I stepped aside. Jessica walked in and started pointing at our shared life. The TV, the espresso machine, the leather sofa. For each she'd say, "I helped pick that out," or "My mom gave us money for that." I just stood there, arms crossed. "I paid for the TV. The espresso machine was a gift to me from my brother. Your mom gave us $500 for the sofa. You can have it if you give me the $2,500 I paid for the rest of it." Her face tightened. The lifestyle she enjoyed, she was realizing, was one I had financed. Then her eyes landed on the watch box on my desk. "Oh, good," she said, her voice dripping with fake sweetness. "You were going to give that to Dad. I'll take it to him. It might smooth things over." She reached for it. I moved faster, my hand covering the box. "No." The word hung in the air. "What do you mean, no?" she scoffed. "I bought that for my father-in-law," I said, my voice low and hard. "I don't have one of those anymore. You made sure of that?" The condition for the gift was not met. Joseph stepped forward, puffing out his chest. "Hey man, don't be a jerk, it's a watch." I turned to him. "You're right, it is, and it's mine. Jessica, get your clothes and your personal items, nothing else. You have 1 hour." The shock on her face was profound. She had mistaken my patience for weakness. They grabbed a few boxes and left. But the biggest fight was yet to come, and it was about the one thing she couldn't pack in a box: the apartment lease. Update 3. The aftermath of their visit was tense. I knew I had to get her off the lease. Following my lawyer's advice, I sent a formal notice via certified mail and email. It stated she had 30 days to coordinate the removal of her remaining belongings and sign the lease transfer paperwork. It was a standard, legally sound procedure. I expected a fight. I didn't expect the power to go out. A week after I sent the letter, my apartment went dark. My internet died. I checked the utility company website. The account, under the name Jessica Vance, was past due and had been disconnected. In her dramatic exit, she had forgotten to pay the bills that were solely in her name. I felt a surge of fury, followed by a grim sense of satisfaction. This was a consequence of her own making. The next day, I called the power company to set up a new account. The agent informed me that because there was an outstanding balance tied to the unit, I would either have to pay it off to get service immediately, or go through a lengthy process of proving new tenancy that could take weeks. I was trapped. I needed to work. With a curse, I paid the $480 she owed. I paid her debt to keep my lights on. I sent a screenshot of the receipt to her and Susan with the subject "Final Utilities" and immediately blocked them both. The real confrontation happened last Friday. My doorman, Charles, called me. "Thomas, Jessica is down here. She's saying she's a resident and is demanding access to her apartment. Her key fob isn't working." My lawyer had told me to have the fob deactivated after she was given formal notice. "Is she with anyone?" I asked. "The tan guy," Charles said. "He's kind of pacing around like a jerk." "Okay, Charles, don't let her up. Tell her she needs to coordinate a time with me in writing as per the legal notice. If she refuses to leave the lobby, please call the police." I hung up, my heart pounding. This was it. I grabbed the file with a copy of the lease and the certified mail receipt and went downstairs. The scene was worse than I imagined. Jessica was yelling at Charles. Joseph was. predictably, filming it with his phone. "There he is," she shrieked. Tell him he can't lock me out." As if on cue, two police officers walked in. Jessica immediately turned her performance on them. "Thank God. He's illegally evicted me. He cut off my power, and he's holding my things hostage." When she was done, one of the officers, a tired-looking man who had clearly seen it all, looked at me. "Sir, what's going on?" I didn't open with my evidence. I just looked at Jessica. "Jessica, you left. You abandoned the apartment. I sent you a legal notice to arrange a time to get your things. You haven't. Instead, you show up and cause a scene." To the officer, I said, "This is a civil dispute. She is the primary on the lease, but she has moved out. I have given her formal notice to collect her property. She's refusing to follow the procedure." I held up the folder. "I have all the documentation." The officer sighed, not even looking at my folder. "Ma'am, is it true you are no longer living here?" Well, I'm staying with a friend. He forced me out," she sputtered. "Okay," the officer said, his patience gone. "This is a civil matter. We don't get involved in lease disputes, but what you're doing right now is causing a disturbance. You need to leave the property. You can take him to court if you want, but you can't stand here and scream at people. Leave now, or you can be cited for disorderly conduct." The defeat on her face was absolute. It wasn't a clean victory for me, just a messy, public airing of our drama. But it was enough. Joseph had stopped filming. They turned and left. As I walked back to the elevator, Charles gave me a sympathetic nod. "Sorry, man." "It's not your fault, Charles," I said. "Thanks for handling it." The battle was over, but the war wasn't. She still had to get her things, and I had a feeling the final act was going to be pathetic. Final update. It's been a while. The 30-day clock ran out. On the final day, I got a terse email from a lawyer she had clearly scraped together the money to hire. It arranged a time for her to retrieve her personal effects and included a signed copy of the lease transfer she had folded. The moving day was a sad, quiet affair. No Joseph. Just Jessica and two movers. She wouldn't look at me. She just walked through the apartment, pointing at the boxes I had neatly packed, her face a mask of stone-cold resentment. The whole thing took less than an hour. As the movers carried out a hideous floor lamp she loved, its cord snagged and the ceramic base cracked. Jessica flinched, and a small, almost inaudible sound escaped her lips. It was the only emotion she showed, and then she was gone. The silence that followed was the cleanest sound I've ever heard. The story doesn't end there, but I've had to piece together the rest of it from fragments. There was no single source, no satisfying intelligence report. Life isn't that neat. I heard from a mutual friend who works in event planning that Richard Vance had gone on a rampage, calling every vendor, threatening lawsuits and bad reviews. But contracts are contracts. The friend estimated their losses were well into 6 figures. The primary loss, though, wasn't financial. It was the humiliation. I ran into another old friend at the grocery store. It was awkward. But after a few minutes, she hesitantly told me that Jessica and Joseph had a massive, public breakup. The rumor was that once her father's financial support was cut, Joseph's interest in her vibrational energy plummeted. He was gone within a month. The final piece came from a venomous email Susan sent me after I forwarded the final paid-off utility bill. It was a rambling, blame-filled tirade that, between the lines, painted a picture of a family in turmoil. A furious husband, a distraught daughter, and her in the middle, blaming me for the entire disaster. As for me, I'm doing okay. The first month was about anger and logistics. The second was about processing the grief. Not for Jessica, but for the lie I had been living. I grieved for the fool I had been. Some nights, the sheer audacity of her betrayal still hits me, and I feel that old, hot anger. But then I wake up in my quiet apartment, an apartment that is now truly mine, and I feel a profound sense of peace. I sold the engagement ring. I used the money to pay off the last of the wedding-related debts I'd incurred and put the rest away. It felt like closing a bad account. And the watch? The custom chronograph for Richard? It's still in its box, tucked away in my safe. For a while I thought about selling it, but I haven't. It's not a trophy. It's just a reminder. A reminder that my instincts were trying to tell me something for months. A reminder that my calm, methodical response wasn't about revenge. It was about survival. It's a monument to the most expensive bullet I ever dodged. Thank you all for listening. It's time to log off and go live the life that's actually waiting for me. My wife said, "The kids and I are leaving. Don't try to find us." I responded, "Okay." Then I activated the GPS trackers on the going away gifts I bought them. 24 hours later, the police were thanking me. I, 42 male, am sitting in a house that is suddenly way too quiet. The only sound is the hum of the refrigerator and the clicking of my keyboard. An hour ago, my wife of 15 years, Lena, 40, stood in this very spot, right by the door, and delivered her big speech. "The kids and I are leaving," she said, her voice trying for firm but trembling just a little. "I've packed our bags. We're going somewhere you won't find us. Don't try. This is over." She expected a scene. Tears, begging, yelling. I know she did. She's always thrived on drama, on big emotional reactions. It feeds her. I looked at her, standing there with her hastily packed suitcases. My son Leo, 12, and my daughter Maya, 8, looking confused and scared behind her. My heart twisted for them, not for her. I just nodded. "Okay." The single word threw her more than a screaming match ever could. Her face flickered through a series of emotions. Shock, then anger, then a flash of something that might have been fear. "Okay, that's all you have to say?" she sputtered. "You've clearly made up your mind," I said, keeping my voice even. "Arguing seems pointless." I then turned to my kids. My voice softened. "Hey guys, looks like you're going on a little trip." This wasn't a psychic prediction. For the last few months, Lena had been distant, talking about feeling trapped and needing a real change. At the same time, I'd noticed financial oddities in the statements for the small marketing firm I owned. It wasn't a huge leap to connect the two. So I prepared a contingency, not for a fight, but for information. I walked over to the hall closet and pulled out 2 backpacks, a sleek, black one for Leo and a sparkly unicorn one for Maya. "I know you guys have been wanting new school bags. Might as well start using them now." For the kids, this wasn't unusual. I often bought them practical things out of the blue. But stitched deep into the lining of each bag, near the base, was a tiny, wafer-thin GPS tracker. A few weeks ago, feeling a gnawing sense of dread, I'd ordered a pack of 3. The third one I'd placed on the underside of the spare tire in her car, just in case the backpacks were left behind. Overkill? Maybe. But my gut told me something was fundamentally wrong, and I needed to be prepared to protect my children if things went sideways. Lena eyed the bags, a flicker of annoyance on her face. This wasn't in her script. She wanted to be a martyr, a brave woman escaping a broken home. She didn't expect me to facilitate her exit with practical gifts for the children. She snatched her purse, herded the confused kids out the door, and shot me one last look of pure venom before slamming it shut. The second the car pulled out of the driveway, I walked back to my office, sat down at my computer, and opened a browser window. I pulled up the tracking app. 3 little dots blinked to life on a map, all moving together. Heading east. She said not to find them. She never said I couldn't watch them. This isn't about control. It's about consequences. She thinks this is an escape. She has no idea it's a cage of her own making. And the real kicker? The thing she doesn't know that I know? It's not just about her leaving me. It's about what she's running to. And who she's taking my children to meet. Let the show begin. Update 1. It's been a wild 48 hours. The 3 little dots on my screen have been my primary source of entertainment and validation. Lena drove for about 6 hours, finally stopping at a cheap motel just off a major highway several states over. I watched them settle in for the night. Seeing my kids dot stationary in that crappy motel room ignited a cold, hard anger. This was her choice, her mess. My job was to protect my kids from the shrapnel. The next morning, a new development. The dots moved to a diner, and then they were joined by a 4th person. My tracker app can't identify people, but I had a pretty damn good idea who it was. Let's call him Darren, 45. Darren is, or rather was, my business partner. For the last 2 years, I'd suspected money was trickling out of the company. I'd been quietly compiling evidence, spreadsheets, transaction logs, questionable invoices. I had a mountain of data, but I was missing the final piece. Where the money was going. Lena handed it to me on a silver platter. After breakfast, her car, with my kids inside, followed another vehicle to a new address. A quick search revealed it was a newly leased house in a quiet suburban neighborhood. This is where my calm plan kicked into high gear. This was never just about a cheating wife. It was about a coordinated attack on my life. I didn't call Lena. I didn't call Darren. I called Detective Miller. Miller is a sharp guy in the economic crimes unit. I'd met with him a month ago, presenting my financial findings as a potential internal fraud issue without naming Darren, wanting to understand my legal options. He'd been blunt. Without proof of where the stolen assets went, it was a difficult case. He told me to call him the second I had concrete, actionable proof. "Detective Miller," I said when he picked up. "It's me. The potential situation is now an active one. I have a name, bank records, and, as of 20 minutes ago, an address where the stolen funds are likely being used." I explained that my wife had taken my children across state lines without my consent and was now cohabitating with the man I believed had been embezzling from me. I told him the address. The police don't just act on your word and an app. Miller was professional but cautious. "Sir, I understand your distress. But parental kidnapping claims are complex, and a GPS dot isn't enough to raid a house. However, the financial crime aspect is something we can act on. Email me everything you have. I'll have to coordinate with the local PD in that jurisdiction. This will take some time. Do not go there. Do not contact them. Let us do our work." The next 24 hours were agonizing. I hired a family law attorney, a shark named Helen, and gave her the entire story. She immediately started drafting an emergency custody petition. Around 8 p.m. tonight, my phone finally rang. It was Miller. "Okay," he said. "Your file was incredibly thorough. Local PD sent a car for a welfare check on the kids, standard procedure based on your report of parental abduction. When your wife answered the door, they saw my primary suspect, Darren, in the living room. That was enough to confirm his location." He explained they didn't arrest him on the spot. They waited. An hour later, Darren left the house alone in his car, and they pulled him over and took him into custody on the fraud and embezzlement warrant. Miller said Darren was completely blindsided. As for my kids, Miller said the local officers described the situation as tense. Lena was hysterical, screaming that I was a monster. The officers determined that removing the children from a volatile environment with a non-guardian present, now that Darren was arrested, was in their best interest. They were taken to a local child services center. "She didn't ask for a lawyer," Miller told me. "She kept screaming for Darren. She's building a narrative that you fabricated all this to get back at her for leaving. You were one step ahead the whole time, weren't you?" "I just pay attention to the details, detective," I replied. "I'm in my car now. I've been driving for 4 hours. I should be there to pick up Leo and Maya in another 2. I packed their favorite snacks, their pillows, and the dog, who's been whining in the back seat, confused about why half his pack disappeared. I feel hollow, but clear. The part of me that might have mourned my marriage died a long time ago. All that's left is a father, and that father is going to get his kids." Update 2. It's been 2 weeks since I drove through the night. Seeing my kids in that sterile government building, that image is burned into my brain. Maya just buried her face in my jacket and sobbed. Leo tried to be brave, but he was trembling. "I'm sorry, Dad," he whispered. "He's a kid. He has nothing to be sorry for." Step 1 was getting them home. Step 2 was re-establishing security. Step 3 is dealing with the architects of this mess. Darren is out on bail, his assets frozen. His lawyer knows the evidence against him is overwhelming. The trial is months away, but his career is over. Lena is the real piece of work. The entitlement is breathtaking. After being questioned and released, she started blowing up my phone. I finally answered, putting it on speaker while I made the kids mac and cheese. "You bastard," she shrieked. "You had him arrested. You humiliated me. You traumatized your children." I calmly stirred the cheese sauce. "Lena, did I traumatize the children? Or was it the person who ripped them from their home to go live with her boyfriend, a man who stole from their family?" "Darren is a good man," she insisted. "This is a misunderstanding you've cooked up because you can't stand to see me happy. You're trying to ruin our new life." Our new life. The delusion is astounding. "Lena, there is no our new life," I said flatly. "There is only Darren's future court date and our future custody hearing. I suggest you find a lawyer." Then I hung up. A few days later, my lawyer, Helen, filed the emergency custody petition. In the virtual hearing, we presented the police report and the timeline. The judge, seeing the evidence of parental abduction across state lines to cohabitate with an alleged felon, didn't hesitate. She granted me a temporary emergency custody order. For now, Lena has no visitation rights, pending a more thorough hearing. This is when the dirty tricks started. First, the anonymous CPS call alleging I was an alcoholic and the house was unsafe. I knew it was her. I calmly invited the social worker over. She found a clean house and 2 kids doing homework. I showed her the police report and the temporary custody order. The case was closed in an hour. The social worker gave me a weary smile. "We see this kind of retaliation a lot," she said. The real revenge, though, wasn't something I did. It was something Lena had already done. In the process of securing our home life, I started going through our shared electronics. Lena had been the one who set up the family's cloud accounts, our tablet logins, all of it. On the family iPad, which she'd wiped before she left, I initiated a data recovery process, telling Helen I was looking for any financial documents she might have stored. What I found was better. The recovery software pulled up fragments of deleted chats from a messaging app. Chats between Lena and Darren. It wasn't just an affair. It was a business plan. They discussed the embezzlement, debated how much they'd need. And then I found the message from Lena that made my blood run cold. Dated 3 months ago, she wrote to Darren, "He's not a fighter. Once I have the kids, he'll give me anything to see them again. The house, the business, all of it. He'll fund our new life and won't even know what hit him." I screenshotted everything and sent it to Helen. Her reply was a single word: checkmate. We now have a preliminary custody hearing scheduled for next month. Lena thinks this is a battle over who gets the kids on weekends. She has no idea she's walking into a legal massacre where her own words will be the primary weapon. She thought I was a resource to be drained. She's about to find out what happens when the well runs dry. Final update. It's been 6 months. The dust has settled, revealing a landscape permanently altered. The quiet in the house is different now. It's not the empty silence of absence, it's the peaceful hum of a new normal. The legal battles are over. As predicted, they were a massacre. At the custody hearing, Lena tried to paint me as a controlling, vindictive husband. Her lawyer, a clearly overwhelmed public defender, did his best. Then Helen presented her evidence, the police reports, the CPS call, and finally the printouts of the recovered chat logs. She read Lena's message about using the children as leverage aloud to the court. The judge's face was stone. Lena just crumbled. The final custody ruling was decisive. I was granted sole physical and legal custody. Lena was granted bi-weekly supervised visitation, which she has to pay for herself. After her 3rd visit, where she reportedly spent the entire time trying to convince the kids I was the villain, she stopped scheduling them. She couldn't afford the fees, and I suspect she couldn't stand seeing that her manipulation no longer worked on her own children. The divorce was finalized last month. It was just as brutal. Her final, desperate play was to claim she was a victim of coercive control from Darren. It was a pathetic attempt to recast herself as a victim. It failed spectacularly. Darren, staring down a 10-year sentence, had taken a plea deal. To get a reduced sentence, he agreed to testify against his co-conspirator, Lena. He provided the prosecution with his own set of messages where Lena was the aggressive one, pushing him to take more money, calling him a coward when he got nervous. His testimony, corroborated by my evidence, painted a clear picture of her as the plan's architect. The judge was scathing. The house was protected. It was purchased by my company, an LLC I established years before the marriage, so it was never a marital asset. Due to her deplorable conspiracy to commit fraud against the marital estate, she was denied alimony. She walked away with her personal belongings and a 10-year-old car. She was also ordered to pay child support, a significant portion of her minimum wage income. Her new life with my money had vanished. As for the stolen $200,000, it's gone. Spent. The business insurance company is still giving me the runaround on my fidelity bond claim. They might cover a fraction of it eventually. It doesn't matter. The business is recovering because I'm working my ass off, not because of some easy payout. Life is better. It's strange to say, but it is. Without the constant tension of Lena's moods, the house is lighter. Leo has gotten really into robotics. Maya's art is all over the fridge. We have a routine. We have peace. They are in therapy, and it's helping them process the mess their mother created. I had a moment of vulnerability last night. I was watching an old home movie from a vacation years ago. Lena was in it, smiling, laughing with the kids, and I felt a pang of something. Not love, not regret, just a sad acknowledgement of the sheer waste of it all. The person I thought I married either never existed or died a long time ago, replaced by a greedy, entitled stranger. I have to live with the fact that I missed it for so long. A few minutes later, Maya came and sat with me on the sofa. She pointed at the screen. "That was before Mom got sick in her head," she said, with the simple, brutal honesty of a child. I looked at her, my smart, resilient little girl. "Yeah," I said, my voice a bit thick. "It was. The revenge wasn't the courtroom drama. It wasn't the financial ruin she brought upon herself. It was this. The quiet, boring, wonderful peace of a Tuesday night. It was my son showing me the robot he programmed. It was my daughter correctly diagnosing her mother's moral failings. It was the justice of a life reclaimed not by a grand scheme, but by simply holding on, telling the truth, and letting the consequences fall where they may. She tried to burn my world down. She just ended up clearing away the dead wood so something new and better could grow. And it has.